Mewtwo, the genetically engineered Pokemon, Shadow the Hedgehog, the ultimate life form. We've all at some point in our lives questioned our very being, whether it be our reason to keep living, our career path, or if our past is truly what defines us. There are no two fictional characters that embody such introspection as these two genetic innovations. Today, we find out which life form is truly the ultimate.
That was pathetic.
If there's one thing we know Mewtwo for, it's his psychic powers. Telekinesis, projectiles, force fields, giant spoons, confusion hacks, the usual telekinetic powers you see in fiction. Mewtwo, however, is absolutely cracked in his versatility. He developed his own Pokeballs capable of trapping others, and his own cells can cause cellular decay to others. And we can't not mention its signature move, Psystrike, giving foes a mental shock. Perhaps his most iconic ability is the Mind Wipe, mind control, and mind reading. Hell, he can even disable special abilities, forcing others to rely on their physicality. His mind became so strong, even machines designed to remove its willpower and control said mind would not work. He can paralyze you with Thunder Wave, poison with Toxic, prevent itself from being affected by status conditions, has multiple methods of buffing stats and reducing damage, and speaking of stats, with Guard and Power Swap, it can swap any changes in its default stats with any changes in the opponent's. And with Trick Room, default speed stats are swapped. Not to mention, in extended media, it's shown to be able to swap health bars. It can put you to sleep, transport you into another dimension. With Me First, it can use precognition to utilize a foe's move before they can weaponize it. And like most psychics, he can teleport. Mewtwo proving its superiority by being able to do so across dimensions. With Psycrush GX, all active energy is removed from an opponent, and Psy Barrier will nullify all damage from someone who isn't a fully evolved Pokemon. Somehow it can even remove the soul from someone's body too. With all this power, Mewtwo is capable of one-shotting legends like Articuno, defeating the planet-busting Deoxys, and creating actual black holes the size of its torso. Hell, lesser psychics like Gothitelle can apparently warp space up to tens of thousands of light years away. That's at the lowest end galaxy level. Its durability is nothing to scoff at either, as the Mews are effectively immortal, being able to survive without oxygen for extended periods. This immortality grants Mewtwo a healing factor, such as the time it recovered from being stabbed by Deoxys. It can also just use the move Recover to heal most of its health as well. Speaking of which, Mewtwo can straight up resurrect itself should he die, so long as its mind and body are intact at least. Not that Mewtwo would rely on these abilities given its tanked attacks from Genesect and Ho-Oh, and this is without going over any of Mewtwo's mega evolutions. With X, he gains dimension-based attacks like Psy Disaster, and whilst in this form, he's capable of matching 50% Zygarde in speed, as well as take multiple hits from it. And with Mega Mewtwo Y, he becomes immune to sleep hacks, and can slow down its perception of time. Y once assisted Deoxys and Rayquaza in slowing the Tree of Life's descent into the sun, which would have pulled the whole planet in with it. There's even evidence to suggest, through everything we've gone through, that Mewtwo would be comparable to the Generation 7 legendaries, who can cross thousands of light years in minutes. Also, you know how Mewtwo is comparable to 50% Zygarde, at least in speed? Well, Zygarde had no issue keeping up with Ultra Necrozma. Even base Necrozma is capable of absorbing all of the light within Ultra Space, and Ultra Necrozma lit up all of Ultra Space. Mewtwo in some continuities has been corrupted by items like the Shadow Synergy Stone, transforming it into Shadow Mewtwo. Shadow Mewtwo is unbelievably powerful, capable of nuking the planets, draining life energy, erasing things out of existence, and creating entire subspace rifts. He can even use the move Dream Eater, which, well, take a guess. This being a key move in fellow legendary Pokemon Darkrai's arsenal. Mewtwo once battled Darkrai, both proving capable of petrification, as well as proving to be direct equals, even in base form. This is noteworthy as Darkrai has on occasion survived dimension-ending attacks from Dialga and Palkia. Darkrai also once resisted the pull of a giant black hole he created that was going to merge two universes together. Impressive as the protagonists could not do this. There are also multiple games which gives us reason to suggest Mewtwo can match the greatest powers ever seen. There's a whole movie dedicated to throwing off legendary power scaling, and Ultra Sun and Moon straight up has Mewtwo and Giovanni at the top of the legendary hierarchy, above Cyrus and his Dialga Palkia. This may sound baffling, and trust me, it is. But I'ma save some time and just say go watch my Mewtwo episode, or read the blog for this matchup we made. Mewtwo's emotional arc centers on identity, purpose, and the right to exist. Born from human experimentation and treated as a tool, Mewtwo begins in a state of existential rage, convinced that power is the only way to define himself and that humans and Pokemon alike are beneath him. His crisis comes from being created, not born, which fuels his belief that he has no inherent worth. Through encounters with Ash, the clones, and the compassion shown by others, Mewtwo confronts the idea that life's value, it's not determined by origin, but rather by choice. His journey shifts from vengeance to self-acceptance. Identity is not imposed by creators or circumstances, it is something we claim for ourselves. Moving on, if there's one thing we know Shadow the Hedgehog for, it's his incredible levels of speed, thanks to those rocket skates, granting him semi-flight as well. Such feats of speed include dodging lasers, navigating inside of a light speed circuit, and matching the speed of the Paradox Prism, which split the universe into 6 new realities. Taking this into account, Sonic's universe must be 6 times the size of our own, making reacting to the Paradox Prism at least 4 quintillion times the speed of light. He can even restore gaps in space-time via his speed alone, which sounds wrong, but can't argue with the law. But he also has his fair share of powers, such as the many guns that he owns, like the Heal Cannon, which can remove evil intention. Oh, and Shadow can theoretically just summon any weapon he wants thanks to his Black Arm DNA, which grants him immortality. More on said DNA later. He also carries around items like basic stat buffs, but also items that can make status effects moot and revive him upon death. Most of his powers, however, are linked to his Chaos Energy, teleporting, the Projectile Chaos Spear, the Energy Draining Lance, and the Omnidirectional Blast, which he once used to down Eggman's Death Egg in a single attack. He can even use Chaos Energy to heal wounds. Somehow he can even summon rifts in space-time to banish foes. Not random at all. His most iconic ability though is Chaos Control, where Shadow can warp space and time. This includes teleporting across dimensions and stopping time. Chaos Control can also seal others away within dimensions, making them unable to escape. This may seem random, but we have seen characters like Tikal and the Ancients do this as well. Not that Shadow needs any fancy abilities when villains like Void could destroy Imaginary World, with Adventure Era base Shadow being somewhat comparable. Of course, nowadays this would be a piece of cake. Imaginary World is the source of all dreams within the verse, which are their own universes. If multiversal scaling wasn't enough for you, it contains 4th dimensional space, literally being shaped like a tesseract. What this means is that Void could destroy at minimum a multiversal construct. Bear in mind, however, Imaginary World in and of itself is just a universe which happens to contain 4th dimensional constructs, which begs the question of, if that is the case, does Sonic's overall space-time need to be 5th dimensional? It makes little to no sense, but it's also very much what is implied. Anyways, back to the Black Arm DNA. Shadow would eventually unlock its full potential during his rematch with Black Doom, better known as Shadow Evolved, gaining abilities like Doom Surf, Doom Morph, and Doom Fly. Said DNA also grants him some weird resistances, such as a transmutation, possession, and time manipulation. It also allowed him to take on that a-hole Black Doom, who could encompass all of white space with his power within 3 seconds. With all of his power, Shadow needs to wear inhibitor rings to contain it, as if he takes them off, he becomes powerful enough to match a single Chaos Emerald. Speaking of which, the emeralds transform thoughts into power, being directly linked to the user. For instance, if they're stolen, the user can just take them back. They can resurrect others, restore reality, and absorb energy to recharge should they be drained. But the most iconic power they grant are the Super Transformations, a form that grants Shadow infinite stamina and power. Super forms can also nullify negative energy thanks to their positive energy. They can even grant the user a resistance to any form of mind control. Not that Shadow needs an emerald to resist such attacks. It also allows Shadow to destroy the armor of Solaris and dodge its world-ending lasers. Solaris being a super dimensional being that could eat dimensions and timelines for lunch, which would need to include Imaginary World, placing Solaris at least a whole higher dimension beyond that. Shadow the Hedgehog's emotional character arc is built around grief, identity, and the struggle between purpose and autonomy. Created as the ultimate life form, yet shaped by the trauma of losing Maria. Shadow begins torn between vengeance and fulfilling a promise he can barely remember. His journey is defined by conflicting memories and the expectation that he must live according to what others, such as Gerald, Gunn, even Eggman, intended him to be. Through the games, Shadow slowly rejects being a weapon or experiment and chooses to define his own path, honoring Maria not through destruction, but through protecting life. One's origins don't dictate one's destiny. Despite pain and manipulation, Shadow ultimately learns that true purpose is something he can create for himself. So, who truly wins? Let's break this down into 5 categories. The easiest to discuss here is versatility, which, yeah, Mewtwo takes. Don't get me wrong, Shadow has a lot of abilities, but a lot of them do similar things. Mewtwo, meanwhile, has just about every ability under the sun, which could lead to Shadow stumbling upon something he's not prepared for. And given how, in my opinion, neither have a definitive experience edge, I'd say Mewtwo takes the dub here pretty comfortably. The question being, how much of this insane arsenal did Shadow have answers for? Which leads us to category 2, Super Shadow vs Mewtwo. Now I know it sounds pacing breaking, but I promise there's a point. Point 1 being Super Shadow would neg the verse, Arceus aside potentially. Being comparable to super dimensional threats like Solaris means Shadow gets clear cosmology scaling. Mewtwo can scale to the Creation Trio and Ultimate Cosmo to a degree, but even if we cap them at, say, infinite multiversal via cosmology statements, which are quite vague, Super Shadow would still make a light work of Mewtwo, even in his mega forms. But the debate doesn't end here in my opinion, for one crucial reason. Super Shadow's transformation does not scale to his speed, giving Mewtwo a brief window of opportunity to take advantage of this and end the fight, or even telekinetically steal the emeralds away from Shadow, hence why I think the next 3 categories are crucial for Mewtwo. First up, intelligence. Listen, I'm aware of this random NPC giving Shadow an IQ of 200, which, yeah, likely isn't valid, but what is valid is the Pokedex, granting lesser psychics like Alakazam an IQ even Eggman looks dumb next to. That, accompanied by precognition, me first, and mind reading, would give Mewtwo a huge edge on Shadow's game plan. This means Shadow has to be able to outspeed and match Mewtwo's hacks and power. Starting with speed, we can scale both to their versus Dark antagonists. Remember, Darkrai ran into a 2x universal black hole that was sucking the protagonist in. Darkrai before doing so was not affected whatsoever, meaning he is likely faster than its pull, said pull being over 4 quadrillion times the speed of light. On the other hand, Black Doom encompassed all of white space with his presence in 3 seconds. If we were to assume this is a 6x universal construct, we can get an estimate of over 5 quintillion times the speed of light. That's over 1,000 times faster than Darkrai's feat. And yes, given what we know about the size of Pokemon's universes and what we know about white space, these finite ends likely don't matter too much. Cosmological statements about white space means Doom borders on incalculable speed that Shadow arguably can keep up with, meaning Mewtwo has to rely on his mind, abilities, and power to score the victory. Not accounting for basic RPG stats and status hacks, both can teleport, steal each other inside dimensions, which both can just escape easily. Now yes, Mewtwo's versatility could get overwhelming for Shadow, but that doesn't matter if Shadow could counter said arsenal. Thunder Wave, Shadow's got high resistance to paralysis. Trick Room, a possible game changer, but when your speed breaks the formula entirely, I doubt it would matter. Shadow could just break it or teleport out. Slowing down time? Please. Even if Mewtwo created a dimension around them, the emeralds could revert this. Debatably, Shadow can also resist soul hacks. What about ability nullification? I played Shadow Gens, that won't work. To give Mewtwo its dues, Shadow has shown no resistance to petrification, and its ability to slow down its perception of time meant chaos control could possibly be moot. And sleep hacks could also work on Shadow, meaning that Dream Eater could end Shadow's literal dreams of victory. But if only there were a character that could also do this that Shadow can tank attacks from. Even without the emeralds, mind control would cause some strain, but not be a surefire win. Memory erasure, however, did require the emeralds to resist it, but given Sonic's cast can just recall the emeralds to them, I don't think this is a guaranteed win con. But can't Mewtwo just outmuscle Shadow then? A good question, but given Shadow's scaling to Void, I don't think that's happening without generous arguments. Hell, a Chaos Emerald with an energy of null could damage the Time Eater. Someone far stronger than even the best you can argue for Mewtwo. Recover ain't gonna save him from complete annihilation. Mewtwo was a cunning foe whose intellect, hacks, and psychic prowess would keep Shadow on his toes, but the ultimate lifeform speed, counters, and magical MacGuffins proved victorious. At the end of the day, a fort may be fast, but Shadow the Hedgehog was just faster. The winner is Shadow the Hedgehog. Beyond versus debating, both Mewtwo and Shadow embody the emotional journey of beings engineered for a purpose they never chose, forced to confront the weight of their creation while searching for meaning beyond it. Each begins in anger and confusion, shaped by trauma and the belief that their identities are defined by others, scientists, creators, governments, destinies imposed upon them. Yet both ultimately learn that their existence is more than origin. Mewtwo discovers compassion and self-worth beyond experiment status, while Shadow finds autonomy and a way to honor his past without being shackled to it. Their arcs mirror each other as stories of liberation, showing that even those born from tragedy or design can redefine what they stand for and choose who they wish to become. With all that said, I hope you enjoyed. Stay safe, and as always, be excellent to each other.